School teacher sets out to marry the Prince of Wales in St Paul's Cathedral. A worldwide audience of 700 million viewers was drawn to the unfolding of a royal romance. It was to be the century's most celebrated wedding. The 20-year-old bride, unaccustomed to fame, would become the most photographed woman in the world. She had no experience of royal life or its duties, but she would have a profound influence on the institution of monarchy.
I, Diana Frances, take thee, Philip, Charles, Arthur, George. I think like any marriage, especially when you've had divorced parents like myself, you'd want to try even harder to make it work, and you don't want to fall back into a pattern that you've seen happen in your own family. I desperately wanted to work. I desperately loved my husband, and I wanted to share everything together. And I thought that we were a very good team.
Diana Spencer was born on July the 1st, 1961. Her family, the Spencers of Althorpe, had been wealthy landowners since the 16th century, with roots embedded deep in English history. Her family had lived on the edge of the royal circle. The marriage of her parents had been attended by the Queen. Her father, Earl Spencer, was an equerry to King George VI. These ties paved the way for the Spencers to move to Park House on the Sandringham estate. During these early years, the young Diana often saw her royal neighbours. She played with royalty, but it would not prepare her for what was to come.
When the Queen was at Sandringham, they had tea together, and Diana's father built a swimming pool, and so the royal children would come and swim at Park House. And one day, I think that Diana went over to tea there, and there was usual sort of children's tea with nannies and things, and Diana disappeared. Nanny went to look for her and found her sort of playing in the hide-and-seek in the corridor with the Queen.
Apart from these early brushes with royalty, Diana had a traditional upbringing, belonging to a large family secure in its place in a rural community in Norfolk. But at age 6, her parents separated, a moment she would never forget.
One day, one of the nannies found her sort of in the nursery, all alone, with a great big teddy bear, which she was dressing up in her little brother's baby clothes. She desperately wanted something to love, and she loved her mother and she loved her father, and she didn't know what was happening. Her little world was falling apart as much as any child of that age can understand.
In 1973, aged 12, Diana followed her sisters to West Heath School in Kent. The routine of a country house-style boarding school was intended to give her life the stability that no longer existed at home. Although she was popular, she lacked confidence.
She was a very shy girl when she first came to West Heath, shy with adults. Not with her friends, I don't think. I mean, she was always one of the girls. But she was shy with adults until she got to know them.
At school, Diana was remembered for her sport, particularly her diving. Teachers would recall her practicing dives for hours on end. Academically, however, she was less successful. She retained ties with the school, holding warm memories of its enclosed world and her own sense of belonging.
My years at West Heath were certainly very happy ones indeed. I made many friends who I often see, and in spite of what Miss Rudge and my other teachers may have thought at the time, I did actually learn something. Though you would never have known by my O-level results.
While at West Heath, she had discovered her love of working with children. In 1979, after a brief period at a Swiss finishing school, she was offered a post in a London kindergarten.
I wanted to teach children, and they said, why not come along? So I first started off doing afternoons, and then I took over the mornings and did whole days. But I only worked 3 days a week at kindergarten, and the other 2 I looked after American baby boy.
Young England Kindergarten catered for under fives from wealthy local families. Despite her lack of formal training, Diana was a success with the children. But her world was about to be turned upside down. Through family connection, she had been introduced to Prince Charles. The papers were soon speculating that the heir to the throne had found love in a Pimlico kindergarten.
I think we were all beginners huddled in this hall, wondering what to do with the press on our doorstep. And I think she found it very difficult to start with. She sort of regarded it as a challenge, I think. And I was always full of admiration for the way she never said too much, but said enough that didn't show that she resented them. I mean, she was always smiling and polite to them.
The two of you, can you say if you're likely to make an announcement soon?
Lady Diana. Lady Diana.
We thought there was going to be an announcement on his 32nd birthday, but there wasn't, and he told reporters yesterday that it may be coming soon. Have you any comment to make about that?
Lady Diana.
No comment all round. Did you have a good weekend, though? It's work now, okay?
She agreed to one photo opportunity, but she found the result embarrassing, an early lesson. But without any formal advice, and to the astonishment of her friends, this slightly shy 19-year-old handled the press adroitly.
If it had come to me, I wouldn't have known if it was Christmas or Easter. And she handled it with a sort of intuition I had no idea she had. And with great maturity and wisdom beyond her years, she was convinced that certain things were the way to do things, that she must keep her name out of the papers, that that she really must be discreet everywhere she went and everything she did. And I think she was absolutely wonderful.
In 1981, they announced their engagement. It had been a traditional, yet sometimes bizarre courtship conducted under the remorseless gaze of the modern media. She was in love, a question that famously confused her future husband.
I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on. And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Yes.
Cap holder appears with cap and gloves. The bride now has her wonderful bouquet of flowers. Ah, that's what everybody's been waiting for.
A family once wary of publicity now laid on soft-focus Highland photo opportunities. Prince Charles had had girlfriends, but a premium had been placed on finding a wife without a past. One was found, a gauche, self-effacing teenager. She was now joining a family with its own code of values and duty.
The most daunting aspect was the media attention, because my husband and I, we were told when we got engaged that the media would go quietly, and it didn't. And then when we were married, they said it would go quietly, and it didn't. And then it started to focus very much on me. And I seemed to be on the front of a newspaper every single day, which is an isolating experience. And the higher the media place you, is the bigger the drop. And I was very aware of that. But then here was a situation which hadn't ever happened before in history, in the sense that the media were everywhere. And here was a fairy story that everybody wanted to work. And so it was isolating, but it was also a situation where you couldn't indulge in feeling sorry for yourself. You had to either sink or swim, and you had to learn that very fast.
Diana instinctively seemed to know how to work a crowd. She had a spontaneity and lightness that other members of the royal family simply didn't.
I was on their first tour after the marriage when they went to Wales, their first public tour. And it was very obvious there what was going to happen. people would line the streets behind barricades and the couple would arrive and they'd take one side of the street each. And there were people who would actually say, "Oh, no, we've got him. Oh, wouldn't you?" And they were handing him bouquets and flowers and saying, "Could you give that to your wife, please?" Now, for somebody who has, spent 33 years of his life being the one that everyone had come to see, that was very hard.
Within a year, Diana had had a baby. She felt enormous relief. There had been a burden of expectation that she would provide an heir to the throne. Later, she said she felt the whole country was in labour with her. Although outwardly serene, inwardly she was struggling with her very public life.
Well, everybody was thrilled to bits. It had been quite a difficult pregnancy. I hadn't been very well throughout it. So by the time William arrived, there was great relief because it was all peaceful again and I was well for a time. Then I was unwell with postnatal depression, which no one ever discusses postnatal depression. You have to read about it afterwards. And that in itself was a bit of a difficult time. You'd wake up in the morning feeling you didn't want to get out of bed, you felt misunderstood, and you're just very, very low in yourself.
What was the family's reaction to your postnatal depression?
Well, maybe I was the first person ever to be in this family who ever had a depression or was ever openly tearful. And obviously that was daunting because if you've never seen it before, how do you support it? When no one listens to you or you feel no one's listening to you, all sorts of things start to happen. For instance, you have so much pain inside yourself that you try and hurt yourself on the outside because you want help, but it's the wrong help you're asking for. People see it as crying wolf or attention seeking, and they think because you're in the media all the time, you've got enough attention, inverted commas. But I was actually crying out because I wanted to get better in order to go forward and continue my duty and my role as wife, mother, Princess of Wales. So, yes, I did inflict upon myself. I didn't like myself. I was ashamed that I couldn't cope with the pressures.
9-month-old Prince William was taken on their first overseas tour together to Australia. It was tradition that royal babies were left at home, but Diana was prepared to defy palace advice to have her son with her. The Australians were delighted.
Good morning, Princess Diana, Princess Charles.
Does Prince William have a favourite toy?
Jamie, he loves his koala bear he's got. But he hasn't got anything particular. He just likes something with a bit of noise.
Plastic whale which throws things out the top.
He got a plastic whale that throws things out the top, little balls.
Despite her relaxed appearance, Diana was finding her public role confusing. She was given little advice, and all the time, she was the centre of scrutiny.
We went and did a walkabout, and I said to my husband, "What do I do now?" And he said, "Go over to the other side and speak to them." I said, "I can't, I just can't." He said, "Well, you've got to do it." And he went off and did his bit, and I went off and did my bit. It practically finished me off there and then. The pressure on us both as a couple with the media was phenomenal and misunderstood by a great many people. We'd be going around Australia, for instance, and all you could hear was, "Oh, she's on the other side." Now, if you're a man, or my husband, a proud man, you mind about that if you hear it every day for 4 weeks and you feel low about it, instead of feeling happy and sharing it.
Diana found the answers among the people. She revelled in their attention. In London, she had been troubled and isolated, but in Australia, she seemed to draw strength from the crowds. She would later say she found them healing.
And I think this was the beginning of perhaps the Prince's frustration about he could be making a keynote speech about the state of the nation, I'd say. And the media would be interested in the fact that she was wearing a blue and white polka dot dress with a matching hat.
Ladies and gentlemen, the last time I was here was 2 years ago, in 1981, shortly before we were married. And at that time, everybody was saying, good luck, and I hope everything goes well, and how lucky you are to be engaged to such a lovely lady. And my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
At first, his comments were jocular. Oh, I wish I had more wives. Oh, I'm sorry, it's just me that you're going to have to shake hands with today. I'm afraid my wife's on the other side of the street. This is during walkabouts. But in private, he was increasingly bitter and resentful of the fact that he was having to take second place on the bill.
Soon, Diana's image was being used to market hundreds of magazines.
Initially, she was, I think, terribly shy and almost embarrassed by the presence of so many cameras. But as the years went by, she realised that basically what everyone actually does want is a good picture.
These were heady days for the monarchy, basking in the international fascination with the newest member of the royal family. Diana had breathed life and glamour into what for many was a rather distant institution, uncertain of its role in a less deferential age.
You do need an injection of beauty into a royal family. That's part of the story and an important part. And she has done that and had a great effect, made it all much more fun. I like to think of the analogy of Princess Alexandra, who became Queen Alexandra, the Queen of King Edward VII, who suddenly, to everybody's amazement, brought dazzling beauty into the royal family.
During the 1970s, the royal family was seen as rather dull, rather boring, both at home and abroad. Then in the 1980s comes Lady Diana Spencer, a girl with this indefinable quality that we call charisma. She had the Hollywood glamour and she had the style, which was appealing to people around the world.
I think it has constantly been a surprise to her how every little facet of her appearance, her life, her presentation of herself could possibly come under such scrutiny, and and I'm surprised again and admire her for the fact that she has not slipped down all the little troughs that have been put in front of her.
Gradually, Princess Diana was becoming the public face of a family and an institution. It gave her a power that later she would both understand and seek to use. In the early years of her marriage, the children eased the pain in her personal life.
The most important thing was, particularly when they started going to nursery school and then preschool, day school in London, was that we had to find out when the half terms were, when sports days were, when school plays, all the school activities were. And they would be programmed into the diary first. And around that, we would plan other visits. So if a sports day was on a Tuesday, that Tuesday she, would be devoted to being at the sports day or the school play or whatever.
She wanted her boys to have as relaxed and normal a life as possible. But even moments like school sports days were filmed and marketed. sometimes against her wishes, for she wanted to be seen as a caring mother.
She's very sensitive about the family as a unit, and she was extremely sensitive about the fact that when the press made out that her own marriage wasn't very happy. And she said quite often, and she used to say to her nanny, again, that the nanny told me this, that, you know, whatever happens, I never ever want to get divorced. Whatever happens, I'd rather not get married. I don't want to be divorced.
By 1985, her private anxieties were starting to show in her public speeches.
I know that family life is extremely important. And as a mother of 2 small boys, I think we may have to find a securer way of helping our children, to nurture and prepare them to face life as stable and confident adults.
Inwardly, Diana was increasingly tortured. Outwardly, she was acclaimed as an international celebrity. America, a society besotted by fame, embraced her and the commercial spin-offs.
For $5, you can pose with 2 life-size cutouts.
Ready?
If that doesn't impress the folks back home in Tennessee, nothing will.
She and Charles were guests of honor at a White House ball, regarded as Washington's social event of the decade. The attention was all on Diana. To a president reared in Hollywood, a bright, shining star had been discovered.
We had invited for that particular dinner at the White House a group of people who themselves were stars in whatever their activity was, very prominent and well-known people and all, and including some of our performers, theater performers, and Hollywood celebrities. But then she came, and of course she was the new star, and she carried herself very well. And she made a great many people admirers of her on that occasion. I managed to get word to John Travolta. She had mentioned approvingly during dinner to ask her to dance, to break the ice, because most of our people were a little hesitant about that. And he did, and they danced beautifully together, and it was a kind of high spot that I do remember in that entire evening.
The international celebrity soon became a figure of style. Wearing designer gowns, she discovered roles for herself that no other member of the royal family had had before.
Very early on, she came to the conclusion that one thing she could do for this country was support the British fashion industry. Now, a lot of people think that she was told she had to. That wasn't the case at all. She decided herself, this is something I can do. I will only, for public functions, wear British clothes.
There were other interests, particularly her love of dance. She'd once hoped to become a dancer herself, and the touring company, London City Ballet, welcomed her interest. Privately, Diana practiced dance steps as part of her exercise routine. Many of the professional dancers were her age. Like them, she was daily having to give a performance.
We're in the public eye when we're on stage. She's in the public eye 24 hours a day. They're not interested or concerned what a ballet dancer does after they're finished. Really, the amount of pressure she has is much more, I should imagine.
One evening, she was given the chance to dance.
She phoned me up one day to say that she wanted to do a dance with me, and she wanted to keep it a secret from her husband, and sort of, it was supposed to be a special Christmas treat. And I thought, my goodness me, she's so tall and I'm so small. I thought, will this work? And when I met her, to discuss it, I said, well, let's make it humorous. And I said, what kind of dance do you want to do? And she said, well, a bit of everything. So we threw high kicks in, jazz, and a lot of comedy, where she sort of bullied me around the stage, so to speak, dominated me. And when she came out, there was this sudden gasp from 2,000 people, and they thought, no, it can't be. And I could hear their minds ticking over. And suddenly they realized who it was, and they burst into hilarious applause. And everything we did got applauded. And it's, the biggest success I've ever had in my career. And she stole the limelight completely.
Members of the royal family had been patrons of charities before, but Diana went further, holding hands with AIDS patients and breaking down barriers.
I remember introducing a very senior politician to a lady who had started the first children's hospice in this country. The immediate response of the politician on being introduced would be, now the great things about hospices are. But Diana wouldn't behave like that. If you introduced her, she would stand back and let the person tell her what hospices were like, and then would perhaps say, can I come and see for myself? That would be her instinctive reaction. And it made people love her, and it made me admire her and think that I got quite a lot to learn from her.
I found myself being more and more involved with people who were rejected by society. I'd say drug addicts, alcoholism, battered this, battered that. And I found an affinity there. And I respected very much the honesty I found on that level with people I met. Because in hospices, for instance, when people are dying, they're much more open and more vulnerable and much more real than other people. And I appreciated that.
She continued with her charity work, but inside Diana was hurting, surrounded by a world where no one stooped to help her. One or two observers commented on how thin and drawn she was, but none knew she had an eating disorder.
I had bulimia for a number of years, and that's like a secret disease you inflict it upon yourself because your self-esteem is at a low ebb and you don't think you're worthy or valuable. If I'd been on what I call an away day, where I'd been up part of the country all day, I'd come home feeling pretty empty because my engagements at that time would be to do with people dying, people very sick, people, marriage is the problem, all that. And I'd come home and it would be very difficult to know how to comfort myself, having been comforted lots of other people. So it would be a regular pattern to jump into the fridge. I was crying out for help, but giving the wrong signals. And people were using my bulimia as a coat on a hanger. They decided that was the problem. Diana was unstable.
Diana felt isolated in a loveless marriage. The stuff of fairy tales had already grown cold. The press began to notice the distance between them. Diana believed their marriage had been undermined by the re-emergence of Camilla Parker Bowles, a former girlfriend of Prince Charles.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
What effect did that have on you?
Pretty devastating. Rampant bulimia, if you can have rampant bulimia, and just a feeling of being no good at anything and being useless and hopeless and failed in every direction. Wow.
And with a husband who was having a relationship with somebody else?
Was a husband who loved someone else, yes.
Diana, who used occasions like her visit to the Taj Mahal to reveal her loneliness, painted a harsh picture. She felt betrayed that she had been recruited to provide the heir to the throne, with love not necessarily part of the arrangement. Her bitterness found its way into the pages of the book Diana by Andrew Morton. It tore away all the silences and discretions which the royal family lived behind. It was clear that Diana had given the book her blessing.
I was at the end of my tether. I was desperate. I think I was so fed up with being seen as someone who was a basket case, because I am a very strong person, and I know that causes complications in the system that I live in.
How would a book change that?
I don't know. Maybe people have a better understanding. Maybe there's a lot of women out there who suffer on the same level but in a different environment, who are unable to stand up for themselves because their self-esteem is cut into 2. I don't know.
A few months later, a tape of one of Diana's telephone conversations mysteriously surfaced. It did not reveal that she was being unfaithful, but she clearly had a close friend in her life. Diana believed the tape had been deliberately leaked to to tarnish her image.
Have you any idea how that conversation came to be published in the national press?
No, but it was done to harm me in a serious manner, and that was the first time I'd experienced what it was like to be outside the net, so to speak, and not be in the family.
What do you think the purpose was behind it?
It was to make the public change their attitude towards me. It was, if we are going to divorce, my husband would hold more cards than I would. It was very much a poker game, chess game.
Shortly after, in 1992, Charles and Diana made a 4-day visit to Korea. It was a public relations disaster, haunted by reports that Prince Philip had written to Diana reprimanding her for damaging the monarchy. The visit was remembered for its glum faces and stony expressions. It was clear no further pretense was possible.
I wish to inform the House that Buckingham Palace are at this moment issuing the following statement. It reads as follows. It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate. Their Royal Highnesses have no plans to divorce, and their constitutional positions are unaffected. This decision has been reached amicably, and they will both continue to participate fully in the upbringing of their children. Their Royal Highnesses will continue to carry out full and separate programmes of public engagements and will from time to time attend family occasions and national events together.
Deep, deep, profound sadness. Because we had struggled to keep it going, but obviously we'd both run out of steam. And in a way, I suppose it could have been a relief for us both that we'd finally made our minds up. But my husband asked for separation and I supported it.
It was not your idea?
No, not at all. I come from a divorced background, and I didn't want to go into that one again.
With the failure of her marriage now an open secret, Diana spent even more time with those suffering from illness.
Thanks so much.
I'll give you a discount on the...
Sometimes her comments seemed as much about the pain in her own life as about those she was tending to.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have it on very good authority that the quest for perfection our society demands can leave the individual gasping for breath at every turn. From early childhood, many had felt they were expected to be perfect, but didn't feel they had the right to express their true feelings to those around them. Feelings of guilt, of self-revulsion, and low personal esteem, creating in them a compulsion to dissolve like a disprin and disappear.
With the truth about the marriage known, Diana had hoped the forensic interest in her life would abate. But her celebrity was prized too highly, and her sadness only added value. In any case, events had a way of keeping interest alive.
Scandalous, explicit, a right royal shocker that Charles and Camilla loved.
Prince Charles' intimate calls with Camilla Parker Bowles were made public and hawked around by papers and radio stations. It was embarrassing, the very private conversation of two people in love. For Diana, it was a further indication that all of their lives had become public property. At a charity event, she stunned the world by announcing her withdrawal from public life.
When I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did. I realized then their attention would inevitably focus on both our private and public lives. But I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become, nor the extent to which it would affect both my public duties and my personal life in a manner that's been hard to bear.
The pressure was intolerable then, and my work was being affected. I wanted to give 110% to my work, and I could only give 50. I was constantly tired, exhausted, because the pressure was it was so cruel. So I thought the only way to do it was to stand up and make a speech and extract myself before I started disappointing and not carrying out my work. It was my decision to make that speech because I owed it to the public to say that, thank you, but I'm disappearing for a bit, but I'll come back.
Diana's withdrawal had little effect on the media. The royal drama had developed its own momentum. There was growing interest in Camilla Parker Bowles, a woman whom the tapes revealed as being deeply in love with the heir to the throne. Against all his instincts, Prince Charles was persuaded to tell his own side of the story in an interview with Jonathan Dimbleby.
Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down.
On the day that Prince Charles was confessing to adultery, Princess Diana made a high-profile, glamorous appearance. Others, too, were eager to confess and tell their stories, including James Hewitt, who was happy to reveal the details of his relationship with Diana. Eventually, Diana decided that she, too, would talk to a television audience through the program Panorama. Television was becoming the stage where the arguments about the marriage and their lives were played out. Diana, like her husband, admitted that she too had sought comfort outside her marriage.
Did your relationship go beyond a close friendship?
Yes, it did. Yes.
Were you unfaithful?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him. But I was very let down.
A year ago, Princess Diana and Prince Charles were divorced. It was the nightmare she had promised herself would never happen. She had lost her title, Her Royal Highness, but she was a famous woman in search of a role in public life.
I'd like to be an ambassador for this country. I'd like to represent this country abroad. As I have all this media interest, let's not just sit in this country and be battered by it. Let's take them, these people, out and to represent this country and the good qualities of it abroad. When I go abroad, we've got 60 to 90 photographers just from this country coming with me. So let's use it in a productive way to help this country.
At last. She didn't end up the official ambassador she wanted to be, and yet she received more attention than any ambassador could hope for. Sometimes, as in Pakistan, when she visited Imran Khan, who was an opposition politician, she was criticized for political naivety. But she had found a new cause, landmines. She made trips to Bosnia and Angola, drawing attention to the human misery caused by mines left behind when conflicts were over.
First day I was in Quito.
She campaigned for governments to ban the production, export and stockpiling and use of anti-personnel mines. Some saw her activities as intruding into the political arena.
Ma'am, the government minister's home has said you're a loose cannon by supporting this campaign. Do you have any reaction to that?
Well, Jenny, I'm really trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all.
It's been said, though, that you're aligning yourself with Labour policy. Do you think that's wise?
Labour? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're...
We need to move on.
Thank you. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Despite scepticism, she did sway international opinion. Recently, the United States gave its support to a worldwide ban on landmines.
She didn't want to waste the 15 years that she had spent as a member of the royal family. And she had learnt an awful lot in those years, and she wanted to put it to good use. She has had a truly extraordinary gift for helping other people, for showing compassion, and with just a gesture and a word, really being able to change people's lives.
In June this year, she had visited Mother Teresa, who was in poor health. After the years of turmoil, it seemed that Diana was re-establishing herself as a confident public figure, lending her reputation to the Sisters of Mercy.
$10,000. At 10,000, 11,000. Thank you, madam. 12,000.
Also in June, she auctioned off 79 dresses and ball gowns that had been featured on so many front covers. It symbolized a discarding of the past. Her favorite charities, including for cancer and AIDS sufferers, benefited by £3.5 million. While Diana was trying to emphasize the seriousness of her work, the press remained fascinated with the mundane details of her life, like her daily visits to the gym. On one occasion, she turned on a photographer, demanding that he hand over his film. When he resisted, a passerby intervened and pinned him to the wall. It was a sign that Diana's patience with a troupe of freelance paparazzi was wearing thin.
They've decided that I'm still a project after 15, 16 years that sells well, and they all shout at me, telling me that, oh, come on, Di, look up. If you give us a picture, I can get my children to a better school. And, you know, you can laugh it off, but you get that the whole time. I never encouraged the media. There was a relationship which worked before, but now I can't tolerate it because it's become abusive. And it's harassment. But I don't want to be seen to indulging in self-pity. I'm not.
But whilst craving her privacy, this summer she began seeing Dodi Fayed, the son of the owner of Harrods. Her relationship with an international playboy excited the media as she must have known it would. Here was a different side to her, a fun-loving woman with a new man in her life. Papers all over the world vied with each other to reveal intimate moments. Diana was uninhibited about her new relationship, knowing that the lenses were not far away. It seemed that at last she had found some happiness. During this period, she dropped from view in Greece with her close friend, Rosa Monckton.
It was summer, she was a free woman, she was just having a very good time.
That's the way she explained it to you in Greece?
We had girl talk.
But she was happy.
She was very happy. Very happy.
And having
relaxed.
a good time.
And having a good time. And goodness knows she deserved it.
The last time Diana was seen in public was on Saturday, as she boarded a private jet bound for France. In Paris, she met up with Dodi Fayed before going to his father's hotel, the Ritz, for a private dinner. As they left, they were pursued by modern-day bounty hunters, knowing there was a market even for a snatch shot from a motorbike. It led to tragedy in a Paris underpass. Part of Diana's legacy are the thousands of images charting her life, from an obscure teacher to the most recognized woman in the world. She died as she had lived for 19 years in the unrelenting gaze of publicity, an icon of her time for a world fascinated by fame and celebrity. With her youthful vitality, she became the human face of an ancient institution, changing forever the public perception of the monarchy. A few years ago, she delivered what may well have been her chosen epitaph.
I lead from the heart, not the head. And albeit that's got me into trouble in my work, I understand that. But someone's got to go out there and love people and show it. I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts in people's hearts. But I don't see myself being queen of this country.
Näimme prinsessa Dianan siunaustilaisuuden suorana lähetyksenä täällä TV1 lauantaina alustavan aikataulun mukaisesti alkaen kello 12.25. Siunaustilaisuuden jälkeen näemme prinsessa Dianan muisto-ohjelman vielä uusintana.